A battle between the AFC North Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens, which ended in a 41-38 win for the Ravens after Derrick Henry ran, over 50? I think it was 51 yards before setting up a Justin Tucker game-winning field goal in overtime. That wasn't, or at least that was after the Bengals decided to run it 3 times, and then Evan McPherson missed field goal. But it looks like all hell is breaking loose in Cincinnati, and Joe Burrow talked about that loss in the postgame. Let's take a listen to what he had to say about the 41-38 loss to the Baltimore Ravens.
As players, do you feel like there's enough accountability from the coaching staff to the players right now?
There's been tough conversations had. I think our coaches are handling it the right way. Whenever you're 1-4 and whenever you're in this situation, there's going to be tough conversations to be had that guys aren't going to like, and those conversations have been had.
So I want to know, though, what were your takeaways from this game? Were you impressed by the Ravens, disappointed in the Bengals? What do you got?
My takeaways from the Bengals, for the Bengals, they got to play, they got to improve their defense. It's given up 145 points this year, was next to last in the NFL. Their offense has scored a commendable amount, 140 points. It's the worst in the NFL, their defense, except for the Panthers, who've given up 165 points. They can't sack or even put any pressure on the quarterback. The secondary has not played well as a unit. They have tackling issues. Until last week, they had trouble stopping the run. Even Derrick Henry beat them in the overtime. They did manage to stop him during the game, most of the game, but in the overtime, he was the reason they lost. On offense, they have too many turnovers. So I think the Bengals, the main problem is the defense. I mean, their offense has scored 140 points. That's pretty good. And Burrow has got the number 2 QBR now, so he's rallied and he's playing well. It's the defense, and they're not going to go anywhere unless they find a way to improve that. The Ravens, on the other hand, I think right now perhaps they're the best team in the NFL. They played great situational football the past 3 weeks. They take what the defense gives them, the ground and pound against the Cowboys and the Bills, and a great passing performance against the Bengals by Lamar and Derrick Henry in overtime. You had Jackson, 26 of 42, 348 yards, 4 touchdowns. Henry, 15 rushes, 92 yards, 1 TD. He did it all for him in the overtime, man. He had that 51-yard run. It was beautiful. Jackson also ran 12 times for 55 yards. The power rankings, I say perhaps they're the best team in the NFL. They're number 5 behind Houston, Detroit, Kansas City, and Minnesota. Does anyone think if they played any one of those teams next week, they wouldn't beat them? I think they would. Even Minnesota, who's undefeated, and Kansas City's undefeated. I think right now, Kansas City just eking out wins, not playing that well, really not playing that well on offense. With Patrick Mahomes ranked number 16 in the QBRs, man. He's not having a very good season right now. And they banged up their wide receiver core. Juju Smith-Schuster had a 100-yard game the other night. So that tells you that, that this Chiefs team, their wide receiver core is problematic and questionable. Could the Ravens beat Houston? Sure. Could they beat Detroit? Yes, for sure. Would they beat Minnesota? I think so. They climbed out of 3 double-digit deficits against the Bengals in the second half to win that game. The run game has flourished. Lamar has regained his killer instinct. Justin Tucker is coming through now. He had a 56-yarder to tie the game late in regulation against the Bengals. The defense has been opportunistic, but I think there's some things that need to be cleaned up there, giving up that many points to the Bengals.
Well, I'll say this. I wasn't that impressed with the Ravens at all. I think the Ravens actually played relatively poorly.
41 points scored.
I understand that, but they're going up against, like you mentioned, one of, if not the worst defense in the NFL.
Okay, well,
Jaden Daniels put up a more exciting performance in the Baltimore Ravens.
Has anyone scored more than 41 points this year so far?
Off the top of my memory,
I don't think so.
41. Yeah, the Buffalo Bills 2 weeks ago against the Jacksonville Jaguars. It was 49-10.
Well, against the Jaguars.
Oh, and now it's against this is against the Baltimore the Cincinnati Bengals.
The Bengals quarterback situation is good.
I agree with that. No, but
The wide receiver core is one of the best.
Here's the thing. Zach Taylor, I think, is now being exposed as probably over his skis a little bit. Yes, he did make a Super Bowl with Joe Burrow, but he had one of the worst offensive lines of the defense that actually stepped up. Now with the defense that's actually garbage and an offensive line that's banged up and overall not that great, we're seeing some of the mistakes in large part. I'm going to bring this one up. In overtime, Lamar Jackson fumbled the football in a crucial situation. And what did the Bengals do? Let's take a look at this. Because they decided to run it 3 straight times for, I think, a total of 3 or 4 yards. I mean, what are you doing? This game plan is terrible. Why not throw it? Joe Burrow was going off in this game. Absolutely incredible performance for Joe Burrow.
5 TDs.
Yeah, he had 5 touchdowns. Like, he was actually doing incredible, but instead you decide to take the ball out of his hands and put it into Chase Brown's hands, which I don't understand why. I understand you want to keep the clock moving just in case you miss something, but it doesn't matter when your defense is probably just going to give up points regardless, even if you fumble the football, turnover on downs, miss a field goal, as was shown in this game where Derrick Henry broke off for a 51-yard run. And I'll say this is also why I'll say the Ravens were a little bit underwhelming, because what the Bengals have struggled with is overall defense. And Derrick Henry the past couple weeks has been dominant in the run game. What did the Bengals do tremendously actually in this game? Stopping Derrick Henry, because before that 51, or in totality, I think he had 92 rushing yards, but 51 of those yards came on that very, technically it's the second to last play, but the last offensive play of the entire game. So was it 14 carries before that very last carry for Derrick Henry? 51 yards came in the very last play. So they actually did a relatively good job in stopping, I think, truthfully, this season, the Ravens' biggest threat, and that being Derrick Henry. But I'll still be truthful because, like I've said before, this is an honest show. I'm going to keep that integrity up. Lamar Jackson played very well. He had over 300 yards. He had 400 total yards, 4 touchdowns. He played great. He played very, very well. Well, I think Joe Burrow outplayed Lamar Jackson. Yes, he didn't have 55 yards rushing, but I think having nearly 400 yards passing and 5 touchdowns is very impressive. When your offensive line is banged up, your defense can't stop anybody. I think this was a great opportunity for Joe Burrow to prove why the Bengals are still contenders, but they aren't anymore, because this is the 14th time in the Bengals franchise history they have lost their first 3 home games. Would you believe that only twice in those 14 seasons did they finish with more than 4 wins? And those more than 4 wins came in 1985 and 1983 when they finished 7-9. I think this is, if a red alert siren and light weren't already going off, now they absolutely are, because the Bengals are in literally every single game is do or die mode. And if you suffer one more loss, I'm calling it Bengals time of death, week whatever, you lose your 5th game. And I think right now a lot of people are already saying time of death was 2 weeks ago. So the Bengals should be very, very worried. I think that they should be. Their defense can't stop anybody. Joe Burrow has already had private conversations with Zach Taylor. I think the organization is cheap. And they have T. Higgins to pay, and they have Jamar Chase to pay. I think they'll pay one of those guys. They should pay both, but they won't. Their offensive line is not that great, even though they keep trying to improve it. It is banged up. Trent Brown and now Amarius Mims, they're both out. I think this is a really unfortunate situation, but this is what happens when a cheap organization has great players. You're going to need to pay them, and when you don't pay them, they're just going to walk out the door, or you're going to overpay because you waited too long. And this could be a situation this offseason with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, if Jamar Chase keeps having a phenomenal season like he has so far, and T. Higgins if he keeps contributing like he did in this game. It's an unfortunate situation because Joe Burrow, I think, when healthy, is still a top 3 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, they got to do something about the defense. That is, it's just a shame that they're one of the worst defenses in the league, giving up 145 points. Their offense scoring 140. That if they had even half decent defense, they could be right up there, with maybe 1 or 2 losses. Instead, look at them now. They only have 1 win.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Since that, so let's take week 1 out, because that's just a strange week where Burrow lost to the New England Patriots. Would you believe Burrow has the most passing touchdowns? And it's not particularly close. He has 12 touchdowns since week 2 and on, and only 2 interceptions. The next highest is Sam Darnold with 9 touchdowns and 3 picks. He's the third highest grade passer according to Pro Football Focus and has the number 1 passer rating in the NFL in that exact same time frame. And also, he has the 5th highest completion percentage in the NFL, as well as the 4th most yards. It's not Joe Burrow. There should be zero blame on Joe Burrow when it comes to his performance so far, and especially in this game. Joe Burrow cannot be blamed at all. At all. This is 100% on the defense. It's what happens when you let really good players go because you won't pay them. If the Bengals get cheap, they're just going to keep on losing.
Well, the offensive line's banged up and doesn't protect the quarterback very well and can't help them get the running game going. That's a problem as well.
I think really it's about the defense. If you can't stop, yes, Trey Hendrickson is a great player, but we have to remember in this offseason, he already requested a trade because he was disappointed with the amount he was getting paid. So these players are fed up. They've already let guys go prematurely. The past couple seasons, we've seen top-tier defenders go because they would not pay them. If you're going to be a cheap organization, expect these types of results. Every single loss the Bengals have been a one-score game. This is what you should expect. If you won't pay your players that actually make a difference for your team, you let Joe Mixon go. Would you like to have Joe Mixon on this team? I bet you would. Chase Brown's put up a couple nice games, but I think if you compare him, Joe Mixon, Chase Brown, who do you want? I think a lot of people would pick Joe Mixon over Chase Brown. I think this is very, very disappointing to watch because, I mean, especially for me, I had the Bengals going to the Super Bowl. The Bengals were my Super Bowl pick because I believed in them.
Yeah.
Is that a little bit? Is my reaction a little bit, over the top because of it? A tiny bit.
Well, you get a chance. You get a chance once more to change your picks.
When you're a top three quarterback when healthy, and
what
you're putting up
happened to the
performances
defense?
like this,
Why is the defense so terrible?
you don't pay players that matter. You don't pay the players that you need. You also brought back Von Bell, who got benched in this game. Like you're not selecting good players on defense. You're letting the go-ins that you had go. I think DJ Reader is a phenomenal pickup. I think he plays for the Detroit Lions now. He was a great pickup for them. The Bengals didn't want to give him money. You let him go. Devin White now. The Eagles released Devin White. Should the Bengals try to get Devin White? I don't think it would be a horrible pickup.
Yeah.
You might want to think about
You
him.
got to do something.
I think really it was a reality check for him. He was trying to get a bunch of money from the Bucs. The Bucs said, hey, you know what? Fine, we're not going to give you money. Goes to the Eagles, doesn't play a single snap after a 1-year contract. The Bengals need to make some moves, and they need to make some moves very, very quickly. And I think you need to look around the NFL to see where some teams might be selling at the trade deadline and pick up some good defensive players. Now, will there be a lot of them? I think the very good defensive players are on really good teams.
The trade deadline is November 5th, right?
I believe so, yeah, November 5th.
They could be well out of it by then.
And then you might as well just I would buy for next season, if that's the case. If you lose a couple of these games coming up, I think you would just be buyers for next season. Say,
what's the schedule of the next few games?
Here's an interesting one that I should pick the Bengals at, but I have no clue because this season has just been a complete mind screw up. At Giants on Sunday Night Football. The Giants just beat the Seattle Seahawks with Tyrone Tracy, I think, having over 100-yard game. Yeah. And then they go at Browns, Deshaun Watson.
Daniel Jones having a half-decent season so far.
Yeah. No, they have a couple of rough patches. I think the Steelers are going to wreak havoc if Mims doesn't come back.
I don't know about the Steelers. I'm a little worried about them now.
I at this point, I wouldn't be surprised due to the lack of production if Justin Fields gets benched. Do I think it's the right decision? No, because he's keeping the ball out of harm's way for the large part. But I think
he's done his job. He's done what they asked him to do. It's the rest of the team.
I think they want him to do more offensively, and he's just not able to get it done. There were a couple throws, like Kyle Allen made a beautiful throw, I think on a third down or even on a fourth down, and that it looked different. Justin Fields still doesn't have that nice touch on the ball to get to the receiver. There were a couple overthrows, a couple missed throws in the game, but I think when it comes down to it, who will be more productive, and we're going to need to see, because Russ is going to be a full participant this week. Could they switch quarterbacks? It would not surprise me, and I'm sure if they switch it before Friday, we'll be talking about that on Friday's show. But it's disappointing when you see such great quarterbacks and the effort put in go to waste. But hey, the Ravens defense is stepping up big time after the Week 1 debacle. I think right now the running game, they're using Derrick Henry when it matters the most, which is what everybody thought they should do. Use the run game. ground and pound with Derrick Henry. He gets better as the game goes on.
But even
as
when
the
it
carries
doesn't, when
increase.
that doesn't work, they're able to adjust on the fly.
Correct.
With Lamar throwing the ball, he had a great
Speaking
game
about Lamar throwing the ball, I
I
do want to show this. This may be one of the most insane plays I have ever seen. Lamar Jackson fumbles the snap, then rolls to his right, gives Sam Hubbard a big screw you, and then makes a great throw cross-body to the middle of the field to Isaiah Likely. That is one of the greatest plays I probably have ever seen. Because to stiff-arm Sam Hubbard, that's the one thing. After fumbling the snap, then rolling to your right, making a cross-body throw on the move is Isaiah Likely into kind of double-ish coverage.
Yeah.
It was a phenomenal throw. It really was a tremendous throw. But yeah, we'll see. The Cincinnati Bengals go at Giants on Sunday Night Football, and I'll bring up the Ravens' schedule very quickly. They go up against the Commanders on Sunday.
That will be an interesting game.
They're at home in that game.
That'll be a good test for the Commanders to see where they really are.
Their defense is bad too, but Jaden Daniels is looking like an MVP right now.
Number 3 in the quarterback ranking.
I can understand why. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, if you want to check out the full episode, make sure you click the I in the top right-hand corner right now. If you want to listen to this show anywhere you go, make sure you go to anchor.fm/The Harvey Hour or anywhere you get your podcasts.